as we know today, is promoted at all different levels of society. In terms of the university, education in many respects was never really regarded as a social goal or a social good until the last 150 years. As we know, most higher education evolved throughout the world and through different societies, focused on private education, particularly at the higher educational level. That education was for the very, very few. And then as we evolved, I think there was an embrace of education as a social good. And in the U.S., in just before the turn of the century, 1900, we started to develop public universities to be able to support this sort of concept that actually everyone deserved access to an education, that education wasn't just for the elite. And today, there's a dramatic shift in the higher education sector in the sense that not only should we provide access, but it should be affordable, it should be flexible, it should be adaptable, and of course it should be global, and the universities should play a much more important role in helping many people across cultures, embrace diversity, in particular develop a more, kind of enterprise mindset. So I know many of us think we're global and we're international, and in fact at Thunderbird, where Yuli and I work, we study this issue, and we have an institute, a research institute, which looks at global mindset, particularly in the context of leadership and trust and culture. And so we've studied this issue. We have scientific data that looks at the extent to which different individuals, different organizations, and at the country level have a global mindset. We look at how trust varies, how leadership varies, how culture varies in this context across countries. When I was at MIT directing the MBA program many years ago, I won't say how many, but we had this 2-week immersion course. So the MBA program at MIT is a 2-year journey from beginning to end. And to give students a more global international mindset 25, 30 years ago, we took them out of the classroom for 2 weeks and we visited companies around the world. That was my first trip to Indonesia when I took a group of MBA students from MIT. And so, but that was their 2-year MBA journey was fairly limited, I think, in terms of global exposure. It was mostly that 2-week immersion course. And of course, a lot of business education has evolved to integrate a global perspective in kind of traditional disciplines. So we teach economics by integrating cases now across societies. We teach many other disciplines with an international context rather than just kind of isolating the topic as occurred. So when we were beginning courses, we had separate courses in international management. As I said, we had this 2-week international immersion course. So now you see particularly many universities kind of embracing this global mindset, this need to be more international by actually developing cases and again integrating teaching across traditional disciplines, teaching how important it is to be global in the context of strategy, in the context of economics, in the context of many other subject matters. So I think there's kind of been an evolution, and obviously WISSO in a more broader context, we believe, as I certainly believe, that education has now become a social good, and we have an obligation as a university to help people not only help people learn, but also to help people become better citizens, and in particular, better global citizens, which is why we certainly embrace this purpose of us as an institution in helping others kind of instill a global mindset.
Since, okay, I think I need to.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So both are on, then we have
Oh, right. Oh,
just one. I think one at a time. Okay, Thunderbird is a school of global management, right? You've been dealing with people around the world. Lawrence has been to Indonesia for 50 times. Sudah 50 kali ke Indonesia.
I don't speak Bahasa.
Tapi nggak bisa bahasa, tadi saya cek, bisa bahasa Indonesia nggak? Taunya nasi goreng aja. Ini kok agak gemuk ini. Oh ya, streaming ya. Now, we talk about again global mindset. I want to discuss on the term just mindset itself. In your best way of explaining mindset in our daily language, I mean daily understanding, human language, what is mindset and why you think people have trouble adopting new mindset?
Right. How I would term mindset would be just sort of your way of thinking that includes your biases from the way that you were raised, from the way that you were educated, which is also heavily influenced by your parents. So I think of mindset as just a way of thinking that comes, unfortunately, with biases that we may not always understand or even kind of admit to ourselves. And that's why it's very, very difficult to change mindset, because we are heavily influenced from a young age by our parents, by those around us, by our generation. And it's very, very difficult to change that, even with education and with exposure to different societies and traveling and going to school abroad. It's really, really tough to change your mindset. So I grew up in the middle of the US in a state called Missouri. And there's a phrase that says you can go outside the Midwest, but you can't take the Midwest out of the boy, you know? And so I'm very heavily influenced to this very, very day, growing up in a very middle class Catholic community, you know, which included a lot of people that were working class and, you know, middle class, because with that, you know, brings certain values. And I think, again, your mindset also includes your values and gives you a sense of purpose. I think we all need a sense of purpose. So it's very difficult to change that. I think at times many of us may not realize how influenced we are, you know, from our parents. So I teach a course in the complexity of managing multi-generations, and I asked the whole room, how many of you have parents from particularly the older baby boomers or silent generation, with parents who actually told you that they love you? And in a room of 100, I usually get like 3 people who raise their hand, who tell me that they grew up with parents who openly told them that they love them and they're proud of them. And then I ask a question, and I say, for those of you who are parents, how many of you tell your children that you're openly proud of them and you love them? And almost every hand in the room goes up. You know, and I ask the question, why is it that your parents, none of you told you that they love you? Why is it that you feel this need, you know, to tell your children that you love them? You know, we grow up in that sort of mindset where, I'm bringing this example up because I think we can grow up in a mindset where we're not sort of openly told that, or by parents who are not expressive with feelings. And yet at times, you know, the answer to that question taught me that that you can change mindset. You know, you can, it is possible to change mindset. And I ask people, why do they tell their children that they love them? And the answer is that we want to give our children everything that we did not have. That's the simple answer to the reason why every hand goes up in the room when people say, I tell my children that I love them, but my parents didn't tell me that, because we want to give our children everything that we did not have. And again, I think that's an example where I believe that mindsets can be changed. And I think in particularly today, the Gen Z population, some of you, of course, and not me, some of you in this room, are helping people change their mindset, particularly in terms of embracing the concept of sustainability and the need to, be truthful about climate change and its effects. I think that's an example where you have a generation today helping other generations actually change their mindset and also, change their values as well. So, but we know not everybody's open to influence, and to change your mindset, you actually have to listen to people who are different than you or maybe value different things. And that's very, very difficult for many people to be open to being influenced by people that they are not comfortable with, that are not the same, where they don't necessarily embrace differences. So that's very, very, very tough. I grew up in a society, I don't think I ever met anyone who was Jewish before I went to the University of Pennsylvania. So for the first 18 years, I don't remember meeting anybody in my Midwest community that was Jewish. And then I went to the University of Pennsylvania, and after 4 years, the majority of my friends were Jewish, which, taught me a lesson that actually, there's a value to diversity, and we shouldn't sort of bring in our biases in terms of who our friends are, or who we listen to, or who we allow to influence. So anyway, that's a very long American answer to your question.
Okay. You touch on 3 key issues when you mention about global mindset. You mention about leadership, trust, and culture. Ya, nanti kita akan kembali ke situ. Ada 3 aspek yang disebutkan tadi di bagian awal tentang leadership, trust, and culture. 3 big issues, I guess, yeah, in any corporation. But before we go there, let me just elaborate more on the concept of global mindset. If Thunderbird really brings about talks about global mindset, then I would imagine that there would be people out there, corporation, organization, who would have lack of global mindset, right? Now, let me ask you this. What are the imperatives? What are the strategic milestones that any organization should achieve to bring their people? Because karyawan kita kan datang dari berbagai macam latar belakang. They walk into our organization with their own mindsets, with a lot of biases, kan banyak bias-biasnya. Dari proses tumbuh kembang, their nurture, right? Growing up with a lot of influences, they have biases, right? Now they walk into our organization, right? And somehow we feel that we need to introduce global mindset to them, right? So the issue is, why should they adopt global mindset, right? And then what are the strategic milestones, the imperatives to bring them to that level of global mindset?
Right, yeah. So that's a great question. So, well, one reason that it's important to adopt a global mindset is that many organizations will not perform well or even survive if they do not find markets outside of their own country. Some industries, organizations operate in very mature markets. So unless they internationalize and have a much more global approach to, positioning their products or services globally, they're not going to survive. So I think it is imperative for many organizations, just from a kind of a profitability perspective. I think second of all, so there's the financial incentive to being global. Second of all, I have a view that diversity is a strength. And so the more viewpoints and opinions that are circulated and listened to and accepted in organizations, the higher performance can be an outcome. Because what you want to do is take some of those best ideas and approaches and then apply them to the benefit of the organization. To do that, you need a global mindset. You need to know about best practices, you need to benchmark, you need to use other tools which help you as an organization assess what others are doing, good and bad, to then be able to apply that to your own organization. Again, to do that, we want to learn about what other countries are doing, what other industries are doing, what other international organizations are doing, to be able to gain that knowledge and ideas to help us make better decisions using benchmarking and using best practice. So I think there's an operational performance issue that can come as a result of people in organizations adopting a more global mindset, because you get information, again, from benchmarking and other ways which help the organization. So anyway, those are just two quick points.
How would you see the variation in terms of leadership, trust, and culture among peoples from various countries? Yeah, because when we talk about adopting global mindset, as if like we are required to sit on the top of the global issues, right? Yeah. While we see differences, right? Yeah. We see different type of leadership. Yeah. Different culture has different way of earning trust, yeah. Right? And as we know, kita semua tahu betapa susahnya membangun culture di perusahaan. Kadang-kadang maunya culture-nya ke arah utara, yang terjadi selatan. Pengennya para bos karyawannya inovatif, tapi yang terbangun adalah karyawan yang penuh indoktrinisasi tanpa disadari. I was just mentioning, like, sometimes because we get confused about culture, what is culture. Many times instances where companies want to go to certain direction, but their daily practice, their habits actually bring them to the other direction of culture. Right. Yeah. So my question again, how would you see the variation of leadership, trust, and culture in some parts of the world?
Right. Great. So I mentioned, leadership, trust, and culture because these are three pillars in our view of a global mindset. We know there's significant variations in culture, right? With 200 countries and territories around the world, right? Driven by territorial boundaries and language and religion and many other values of those societies, which are quite distinct. In terms of leadership, that may be less obvious than variations in culture, particularly if leaders speak the same tone and speak the same kind of lingo and words and language. But there is significant variation. For instance, I've lived in Malaysia for 3 years. When we look at leadership, we also study power distance. And Malaysia is like off the charts in terms of power distance. It has a very, very high power distance in the sense that subordinates listen to their leaders. They don't challenge their leaders. They don't question their leaders. In the US, we tend to have quite a low power distance. We don't necessarily accept the answer, we ask why, including of our superiors. In Malaysia, they don't do that. The boss is the boss, right? My predecessor wrote a book, he called it Too Many Bosses, Too Few Leaders. He wrote that in Malaysia because many people believe they have a boss, they don't have a leader. And so there's significant variation to leadership, and partly as a result of power distance. Do we feel comfortable questioning our superiors? Do we feel comfortable asking why? Do we feel comfortable challenging rules? Do we feel comfortable challenging the SOPs? And the answer, again, in Malaysia, and somewhat to the extent of Indonesia, is no. Indonesia also has a very, very high power distance. We don't feel comfortable. So there's significant leadership variation, partly as a result of the power distance in society. Now, there's lots of different reasons for this, and it's very, very difficult, to change, because sometimes, you don't want to take the risk of being fired. Many Americans feel like, I can get another job. But, many Malaysians don't feel like they can take the risk to get another job, to question their boss. So, so on leadership, there's obviously significant variations of style and approach, and power distance, depends on the organization. There can also be different variations of power distance in organizations as well. So, there are more organizations, in some organizations in Malaysia and Indonesia, where you actually feel encouraged. There's a culture, there's an organizational culture which encourages people to express their ideas, even if they are in disagreement with existing policies and approaches. But for the most part, certainly not in the GLCs, that's not necessarily encouraged within Malaysia. So we talked about culture, leadership, and trust, right? So trust is at the core of leadership. There's also different trust measurements. We've looked at this issue in the Global Mindset Survey. And, do we trust our government? Do we trust our private leaders? And where trust is highest is in the Nordic countries, in Sweden, in terms of trust in government, in Sweden and Norway and those countries. In Malaysia, there's about 70-80% of people in several Nordic countries trust their government leaders to make good decisions. It's about 50% in Malaysia. It's probably around 40 or 50% in Indonesia as well. So trust varies significantly, country by country, and certainly, across organizations. But I do think it is the core of leadership, and it's very, very difficult at times as a leader to establish trust if you're viewed too differently than others. And I think I teach a small session on trust that we can learn a lot from certain leaders, public leaders. The private sector can learn a lot from public leaders who've been able successfully to establish that trust. I mentioned one example, Queen Elizabeth, that she sat on the throne for 70 years because she knew that trust was at the core of leadership. She found a way to establish a very important sense of trust with the British constituency, and even trust around the world, through her consistency, through her reliability, and perceived kind of good intentions. I think there are examples like that of public leaders that have been able to very successfully establish trust with their constituencies that private sector leaders can learn a lot from. But it's very, very hard to teach people trust. You have to earn it. It doesn't necessarily, it isn't necessarily granted like a gift. It takes time to earn trust, as many of you know.
Thank you, Lawrence. Bapak Ibu, yang kita dengarkan siang ini kan mostly strategic issues ya. Mungkin Bapak Ibu kan nanti berpikir ini cerita yang sedemikian kan pinnacles ya, puncak-puncaknya. Ini breakdownnya seperti apa gitu ya, supaya lebih mudah diikuti oleh tim kerja kita di kantor. The good news is, berita bagusnya adalah, jadi The New Institute baru tadi pagi signing MOU dengan Thunderbird School of Global Management. Ini Pak Yuli, Direktur Partnership ya Pak ya, Business Development di Jakarta. Dan kita launching punya program mini MBA and micro MBA, Pak. Mini MBA. Dan the good newsnya free ya, Pak. Ada yang free ya, ada yang free. Jadi apapun yang ceritakan Lawrence barusan, yang hanya simpul-simpulnya itu nanti akan dituangkan dalam rentetan program mini MBA. Dan bila Bapak Ibu nanti merasa if think you need lebih contextual learning dan dengan deeper discussion, di institute akan provide facilitation gitu, sehingga tim kerja di kantor tidak hanya seperti belajar MBA biasa, tapi bisa dibungkus dalam konteks perusahaan masing-masing. Otherwise nanti ini dapatnya apa dari sisi yang ini ya. Later on Mas Marta akan share seperti apa programnya. We still have 10 minutes left. Tapi sebelum saya kembali ke Lawrence, mungkin Bapak Ibu ada yang mau sharing cerita bagaimana di company masing-masing atau pengalaman atau yang tempat yang pernah Anda dengar. Kalau tadi kita bicara tentang global mindset, ada 3 cornerstone, ada tentang bicara leadership. Jadi leadership yang seperti apa yang dibutuhkan kalau company-nya mau bermain di pasar global. Saya kira per hari ini pasar global itu tidak hanya kita bisa menyerang, tapi juga bisa defense. Ya, karena sekarang competition comes from everywhere. Ya. Kemarin meskipun enggak langsung sama ceritanya, bagaimana para pedagang Tanah Abang protes karena ada TikTok gitu. Ya. Itu kan contoh pedagang Tanah Abang nggak mau adopting global mindset, ya. Dia tinggal bilang pemerintah, tolong dong ditutup TikTok shopnya, gitu kan. Gitu. Ini kan contoh-contoh sederhana yang saya kira di tempat kita masing-masing, our own companies pasti punya challenges demikian. Dan kalau kita bicara adopting global mindset, tadi ada 3 cornerstone yang kita harus pikirkan, leadership, trust, dan culture. Ada yang mau cerita atau bertanya? Silahkan. Sambil menunggu itu, ditodong. Pandai, want to share, mau cerita? Cerita dulu lah.
Sambil duduk aja kali ya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ya, saya dengan Andri Mirzartawan, saya di Bank Muamalat sebagai komisaris. Mungkin it's interesting about what you said, Lawrence, about you mentioned that first mindset can be changed. It can be changed probably by several triggers, triggers by several items, by force or probably also by examples, and also trust. In my organization, in Bank Muamalat, we are in the process of transformation. We had several issues with our NPF, non-performing financing, back several years ago. But we also believe that strict supervision by the governance structures also needed. And at that time, there is a lack of trust also amongst shareholders, and also we cannot find the same mindset of which to go. The majority shareholders and minority has probably different perspectives of where to go. We have some problems, and then, but yeah, thankfully, the government through the Hajj authorities steps in, and we started to set the same tune of where to go. Revamping the organization, and also trying to put a right leader to set the leadership straight. So it's it's an interesting path to go because, Lawrence, you mentioned that probably last year you also provide some a seminar or short course about leadership, right? Yeah, that's right. I think I'm already as a commissioner there, but I'm not aware probably the directors at that time. But we have a common goal at that time to revamp, and this is at the same, not at the same time, but the new shareholders, because us, we are minority, but we've been in Muhammad for many years. But the new shareholders, we have a new perspective to really seek and try to find a good management team which has the same perspective of how to improve, as you mentioned, performance, but and at the same time also need a good leadership that the whole team can trust. Before, the commissioners are not really active, probably formally. I don't know at the other at the other perspective. Yeah, maybe they have one of that's one of the issue also. But now we are trying to set together as a team, together with the commissioner, and the directors, also together with the whole shareholders, to support and looking for a new focus. In this sense, we go into a consumer more, into retails, but we fully aware of the situation, understanding that where we at, and yeah, hopefully we have a leader that we can trust, and this team also has the competency, good competency, the new one. Probably they've been in the management position. The new directors are around 9 months or 10 months. And young team, because the previous one is more senior but not really performing. And hopefully, as you mentioned, we can nurture the leadership where we can build a trust, and it can be followed by the rest of the team, the division, up to the staff all over our branches, where we can resonate that this is our direction. The culture need to be kept, because Muhammad is a strong Sharia brand, and the market also perceive that its Sharia compliance is very strong, and we can capitalize on that. So as you mentioned, I believe that trust is the core. You mentioned the core of leadership. I fully agree with that, and we are trying to build and capitalize from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. I want to mention one of the challenges of any leader establishing trust today is that today in many organizations, you may have 4 or 5 generations of people. You know, I work with 18-year-old interns, and then we have people in their 70s working in the organization. 5 generations. And they each have, again, different experiences, as I mentioned, based upon their experiences of growing up, different mindsets, different values, and managing that and establishing trust and a common understanding with each of those generations is very complex today. And I think I bring up Queen Elizabeth as an example of someone who was an effective leader who could establish trust is, you know, she, over 70 years, led what was the British Empire, which basically fell apart all over the world. She led that transition to the Commonwealth by kind of connecting with all these different countries who had kind of different purposes and visions, and establishing trust with them by having a common purpose. She carried forward this common purpose, this commitment of the UK and their values to democracy, to human rights, to kind of capitalism, to economic freedom, that I think made her effective, and also was a way that she could establish trust with all these various entities that existed within a commonwealth. But I do think the complexity today is that, and in your own organizations, you're working with people from different generations, and getting them to understand each other can be very, very difficult. Because I grew up in an environment where I was taught to treat others the way I wanted to be treated. I was taught the way my parents said, treat others the way you want to be treated. Did you ever hear that phrase, right? So what I learned in the complexity of leadership and establishing trust with different groups and understanding their values was that was wrong. And what I learned is that actually I, as a leader, have to treat people the way they want to be treated, not the way I want to be treated. I have to treat people the way they want to be treated. There's much more a sense of individualism today than in the workforce than ever before. And so, to know each other and to understand each other and connect, we really need to understand what's important to those generations, and in doing so, be able to treat people the way they want to be treated. And that's something that I've learned over different leadership positions. But I do think also a challenge of any leader today is, how do you establish that common purpose, particularly with different generations and different perspectives and different mindsets and different experiences. And I think the most effective leader today is not only establishing trust, but it's someone who can actually establish for the organization that common sense of purpose.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Pak Andre. Ada lagi mau sharing 2-3 menit sebelum saya invite Mas Marta untuk share more about the programs? Ada? Atau masih menikmati dulu saja? Menikmati dulu saja. Pak Hasan, silahkan.
Terima kasih Pak Zul, and thank you so much Mr. Lawrence. I'm interested when you are talking about the values. As we have been aware that each of us will be questioned, or we have to be responsible to what we are doing one day, whether when we are here in this world or when we already come back to our God. And second, values, that we have to do continuous improvement in our life. And also we have to be beneficial to others in this life also. So I would like to get your opinion or your considerations regarding the global leadership as the title of our discussion of today. As we remember that when we are talking about the global, it means a kind of universality of leadership itself. While we understand that nowadays, many people that claim that he himself as a good leader or as a good, or good commander, in his team or his country. But sometimes they are doing so many things that it is not agreeable to the values as I mentioned before. For instance, like today's, when we have Israel and also many big countries, they destroyed very small and very teeny country. How about the values that they are using in their life, comparing to the universal values that we mentioned or we are expecting that has to be owned by the global leaders in these days? That's all that I want to ask you, because many people, maybe they will be confusing. How could they claim themselves as a good leader, while at the other side, they do the bad things which make many people in this life suffering of his actions. That's only from me. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I think many good people do bad things, unfortunately, right? And make bad decisions, right? We've all worked in organizations where we've experienced, leaders. They were good natured, but they made bad decisions, right? I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of this concept of value-driven leadership, but I do think, in addition to trust, values are also at the core of leadership. And now, again, I think one of the challenges of leadership is how do you, with, again, multiple generations, multiple perspectives, multiple nationalities, multiple religions, different genders, how do you establish a commonality of values given the very individualistic nature of people today? How do you establish the common set of values to effectively lead organizations? And that is very, very difficult. And it's probably far more difficult at times with government. I mean, you gave an example of government, leadership, than maybe it is in terms of private sector leadership. But again, I think that's what makes it complex today as a leader, is being able to find a commonality of values enough that the majority of people can agree on as a way to lead. Now, we know some leaders operate very effectively by finding those divisions, right? I come from a country where we have largely two parties, Democrats and Republicans, and they accuse each other mostly of leading by finding the division of values or perceived values in society. Anyway, there's a complex answer to your question. Do you want to comment?
Okay. No, no, I don't. No. Let me wrap up the session in Indonesian to help audience to really hopefully get something back. Jadi Bapak Ibu semua, sebelum kita mendengarkan pesan Mas Marta, kalau boleh saya menyampaikan bahwa kita bicara tentang global leadership, kepemimpinan global. Berarti kalau ada kepemimpinan global, berarti ada kepemimpinan yang berpikirnya tidak secara global. Yang tadi salah satu dicontohkan adalah bahwa sebuah brand bisa saja hilang dengan waktu karena dia tidak berpikir global. Tadi Lawrence mengatakan bahwa kalau tidak masuk ke dalam international level, maka bisa jadi kita tidak sustainable. Bahwa local market tidak cukup untuk menopang sustainability sebuah perusahaan. Kemudian kalau kita bicara kepemimpinan global leadership, ada 3 aspek yang diperhatikan. Pertama ada leadershipnya sendiri, tentu leadership di level company-nya, di level lokalnya sendiri. Apakah leadership yang dimiliki sebuah organisasi sudah mengarah kepada global leadership atau belum? Yang kedua, tantangan pertama di leadership adalah membangun trust. Mengapa? Karena setiap orang datang dengan banyak latar belakang, perbedaan budaya, perbedaan cara berpikir gitu. Sesederhana kalau ketika pemimpin bilang belok kanan, belum tentu semua orang mau belok kanan karena dia pikir saya lebih baik belok kiri. Bahwa harus disiplin, bisa saya sebagian anggota karyawan kita merasa bahwa disiplin itu tidak penting, terutama buat very young millennial generation, Gen Z generation, mereka melihat disiplin dengan kacamata berbeda, gitu. Sehingga bagaimana seorang leader bisa membangun trust menjadi sebuah tantangan yang sangat berat. Dan ketika trust menjadi tantangan yang sangat berat, maka membangun budaya, culture menjadi tantangan yang sangat atau amat berat. Karena core-nya sendiri trust sulit. Jadi kalau kita bicara tentang the whole session of today, bagaimana kita membawa company kita, organisasi kita menjadi company berlevel global, karena ingin membangun sustainability selain growth, maka kita perlu melihat seperti apa tipe leadership di dalam company kita, organisasi kita, bagaimana leadership membangun trust, sebagai bahan baku utama membangun budaya. Having said that, thank you Lawrence for such an enlightening session today. Short but I think powerful. So mari berikan well round applause buat Lawrence. You can head back, I will head back too, and me invite Martha to give more explanation about the program. Thank you everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Great, thank you Pak Zul. Before I start the presentation, I would like to say thank you for Mr. Lawrence. Thank you for sharing your experience and stories. It has enriched our understanding about, actually, this terminology is very heavy, global and leadership. We put the global in front of leadership. Leadership itself is very heavy, I think. All of us in this room strive to find the perfection of understanding about leadership. But we realize that imperfection will drive us to pursue the perfection until we feel comfort with the imperfection itself. Because we always discuss more about leadership. And now, for us, we have a great collaboration to bring back the meaningful on the right definition, maybe not the right, but the updated definition about leadership by put the global words in front of leadership. Means that we face more challenges. Talk about the topics we have discussed with Mr. Pak Zul, and you just mentioned about leadership, trust, and culture. This slide is made by my beloved team. I put my trust on them to create this great slide, because I just read the strategic document from Pak Yuli from Thunderbird. He has explained it very well about this concept, global leadership, global mindset. Thunderbird state that the global mindset is the way of thinking to put back the right definition about the global leadership. Consists of three aspects: psychological, social, and intellectual. So it kind of resonation. Yeah, the new you is the institution with the strong commitment to bring back the spirit of learning. So I think it resonates with the intellectual aspect. But if we deep dive into the handbook that Bapak Ibu semua di handbooknya, we state that we can learn more about passion of diversity. We have a arrangement of curriculum, global leadership, with 5 courses, and we can learn more about the intercultural empathy. We can learn about impactful social impact with many challenges. We have many prior understanding about the diversity, and by learning this curriculum, we can get the updated understanding, I think, because we bring many challenges to learn more by undergoing the set of session through online learning. Okay. Nah, Bapak Ibu, izin saya untuk menyampaikan wrap up dari arrangement atau kolaborasi antara The New You dengan Thunderbird. Jadi diawali dari keresahan kita bahwa online learning itu adalah sebuah masalah bagi setiap orang. Terutama kata kunci yang keluar adalah fokus, retensi, membaca atau mendalami bahan belajar dengan komitmen diri sendiri, itu sebuah challenge juga. Sehingga data-data atau survei atau research menunjukkan ini adalah challenge kita bersama. Maka arrangement atau racikan yang baik dari Thunderbird terkait kurikulum global leadership akan diharapkan lebih bisa memberikan dampak yang berarti ketika The New You masuk ke dalamnya untuk membersamai perjalanan yang mungkin masih sangat panjang ini. Jadi secara sederhana, global leadership yang sudah dirancang kurikulumnya dengan baik oleh Thunderbird akan dilengkapi dengan pendampingan yang kita sebut dengan deep and contextual learning dari the new you. Sehingga akan memberikan dampak yang lebih optimal. Nah, tadi kita punya keresahan bersama bahwa belajar itu juga sangat menakutkan, maka harapannya the new you hadir untuk mengubah stigma itu. Nah, singkat cerita, ini adalah background-nya, ini adalah overview problemnya, bahwa kami akan berkomitmen untuk membersamai Bapak Ibu semuanya untuk meningkatkan kualitas belajar online gitu ya, distance learning. Namun kami tetap menghadirkan feel, menghadirkan experience sama ketika kita melakukannya secara offline. Kurang lebih seperti itu Bapak Ibu. Next. Oke, jadi kami punya landasan atau kami punya, saya menyebutnya juga sebuah racikan. Ini research yang dilaksanakan, yang dirancang dalam studi doktoral our chairman Pak Zulfikar yang disertasi yang menekankan pada action learning dan knowledge creation. Maka pengembangan dari riset ini lahirlah sebuah framework yang kita sebut dengan deep and contextual learning yang tadi disinggung oleh Pak Zul juga, AL4HKC gitu ya kita menyebutnya. Harapannya AL4HKC ini akan memberikan impresi atau memberikan peningkatan kualitas pada cara kita belajar meskipun itu secara online. Maka masih ada optimisme di sini bahwa apakah masih bisa mendapatkan kualitas dalam belajar meskipun kita berada di room digital gitu ya. Nah, the answer is yes. Nah, jadi kita akan memberikan fasilitas begitu ya, atau kita memberikan sebuah penambahan nilai atau added value dengan memberikan experiential learning dan guided facilitation. Inilah yang menjadi andalan kita untuk memberikan peningkatan kualitas dalam belajar. Next. Nah, jadi secara sederhana dalam waktu yang terbatas ini kita bisa lihat bahwa sequence atau urutan dari action learning hingga knowledge creation terdiri dari fase-fase yang saling membangun. Maka ketika kita mulai dengan action learning sudah menyiratkan bahwa kita belajar dari tindakan kita atau dari pengalaman kita. Dan itulah sebenarnya yang menjadi kunci nikmatnya belajar. Yang mungkin sekarang terdegradasi, mungkin stigmanya sudah berkembang, belajar itu menakutkan, belajar itu sangat menyulitkan. Karena kita tidak mengemphasize filosofi ini bahwa action learning belajar dari pengalaman. Berarti setiap orang bisa belajar. Maka harapannya dengan arrangement seperti ini, belajar meskipun online, meskipun sangat banyak, tapi ketika didasari dengan niat untuk mereview, memaknai pengalaman, maka akan memberikan peningkatan atau impresi tersendiri. Sehingga proses itu akan berlanjut menuju fase selanjutnya head, heart, hand, habit. Ini adalah racikan kami dalam menyusun sequence atau urutan belajar dari mulai yang paling awal. Kita mengoptimalkan kemampuan minds atau pikiran kita untuk menganalisis atau mengenrich pemahaman kita terhadap sesuatu yang sudah kita pelajari dan akan kita pelajari kembali. Kemudian akan dipertajam lagi pemahamannya dengan heart dan akan dikonkretkan dengan hand atau bagaimana kita bisa menginterpretasi sebuah pemahaman melalui sebuah ekspresi yang itu tangible, itu bisa terlihat oleh indera kita sehingga akan menguatkan memori, akan menguatkan pemahaman kita. Dan idealnya akan memicu untuk bisa berkomitmen melakukan perubahan. Karena the difference study and learning drive the improvement. Studying drive the knowledge, but we can gain more by learning. Studying is good, but we should put our fully energy to digging more, to learn more, so we can get the improvement. So habit here, terminologi habit di sini kita pakai karena sangat powerful untuk mewakili komitmen kita. Ujungnya, optimalnya nanti hasilnya harus menjadi habit. Karena akan sia-sia ketika belajar hanya sekedar tahu, tapi tidak mau untuk melakukan sebuah perubahan yang berarti. Jadi Bapak Ibu, izinkan kami untuk present ini karena ini sebuah racikan yang kami andalkan untuk bisa memberikan peningkatan kualitas dalam belajar. Dan yang paling akhir di sini dan mungkin bukan akhir karena akan terus berlanjut prosesnya yaitu knowledge creation. Penciptaan pengetahuan. Maksudnya apa? Maksudnya adalah bagaimana ilmu itu bisa disebarkan. Ilmu itu bisa dibagikan karena spirit berbagi, sharing is caring. Jadi kita perlu untuk mengamplifikasi spirit ini kepada siapapun tim kita yang belajar. Kalau kita bicara konteks organisasi berarti setiap pegawai, setiap karyawan yang belajar, yang kita delegasikan untuk belajar mestinya bisa menginfluence teman-teman yang lainnya, bisa meningkatkan atau memperluas manfaat yang mereka dapatkan dari proses belajar. Jadi knowledge creation adalah muara atau akhir tapi tidak akhir, karena ini akan terus berlanjut. Oke, selanjutnya. Nah, jadi secara sederhana kita bisa katakan atau kita bisa maknai sekali lagi global leadership. Mungkin terasa sangat berat, tapi sesungguhnya ini adalah awal journey kita bersama untuk saling berkolaborasi. Jadi Bapak Ibu, the new you bersama Thunderbird siap membersamai Bapak Ibu representatif dari perusahaan-perusahaan di Indonesia untuk bisa mendelegasikan pegawai terbaiknya atau siapapun yang didelegasikan untuk belajar lebih baik lagi dengan pendampingan yang akan kami support untuk bisa meningkatkan kualitas belajar meskipun itu di-arrange secara online. Nah, nanti detailnya, rinciannya, teknisnya kami akan follow up melalui pertemuan-pertemuan yang kita bisa arrange di kemudian hari. Baik, Bapak Ibu, demikian penjelasan singkat kami tentang global leadership. Pak Zul akan menambahkan sedikit, Pak.
Kembali ke slide yang sebelumnya. Sedikit saja. Kata action learning di atas Bapak Ibu semua. Kalau sesi seperti tadi ketika Lawrence sharing kepada kita, itu di dalam konteks inilah H yang pertama, bagian head. Ya. Nah, mungkin Bapak Ibu juga merasakan, ya, kalau mendengarkan pengetahuan baru itu, kalau kata guru-guru kita, masuk telinga kanan, keluar telinga kiri. Nah, itu terjadi di semua itu. Nah, bagaimana supaya waktu masuk itu ketangkap? Nah, action learning adalah proses membukanya, gitu ya. Membuka limbik pikiran manusia melalui apa? Pengalaman kerjanya. Jadi nanti kalau kita Bapak Ibu akan mengirimkan timnya untuk ikut program MBA, sebelum dapat materi, kita pasti akan bahas dulu, buka dulu dengan pengalaman kepekerjaannya. Sehingga ketika sudah terbuka wadah-wadah di pikiran itu, maka H1-nya bisa lebih mudah ditangkap. Setelah itu yang H2 adalah dialog. Seringkali kita tidak memberikan waktu cukup bagi karyawan kita untuk berdialog. Kita seringkali mengatakan kok nggak ngerti-ngerti, kok sudah dikasih tahu salah melulu gitu. Ya. Karena ternyata seringkali kita memberikannya satu arah dan kita berasumsi berharap mereka sudah mengerti. Padahal through dialog lah mereka jadi bisa lebih menjiwai apa yang dimaksudkan tadi disampaikan. Nah, kemudian diperkuat dengan apa? Bahwa understanding itu akan lebih terlihat kalau dia sudah menunjukkan dengan sebuah activity. Maka ada hand di situ. Bisa dengan project based, kita akan introduce bagaimana merancang sebuah project either to solve problems within organization atau untuk menciptakan sebuah inovasi baru. Dan kemudian bagaimana itu dibiasakan dalam kehidupan sehari-hari, tentu perlu kebijakan. Tadi kan kita bicara leadership, pasti butuh sebuah kebijakan atas untuk memastikan our employees memiliki sebuah kebiasaan baru. Dan di banyak perusahaan yang sering hilang adalah pengetahuan. Ketika orang-orang yang expertnya pergi, ya, apa alasannya apapun, maka semua pengetahuannya juga berangkat sama orang tersebut. Nah, bagaimana knowledge itu ditangkap dan stay within the company. Jadi knowledge creation adalah bagian bungkus besar dari knowledge management. Sehingga apapun yang diciptakan oleh lembaga melalui para tim kerjanya stays within the company. Jadi pendekatan inilah yang menjadi kunci utama yang akan ditawarkan oleh The New Institute agar bisa memfasilitasi banyak organisasi untuk tumbuh berkembang dan memastikan create innovation. Kalau tadi bicara global mindset atau global leadership, maka setiap organisasi akan menentukan bentuk global leadershipnya seperti apa buat each particular company itu. Demikian, thank you.
Oke, I think that's all from the explanation about the program, Global Leadership. Thank you for your attention. Kalista, for yours. Thank you, Bapak Ibu semuanya, terima kasih.
Thank you so much, Mr. Marta and Dr. Zulfikar as well for the incredible explanation about today's program. And thank you as well for Professor Lawrence for today's incredibly insightful information. So with that said, it appears that we've almost reached the end of today's event. However, before we officially conclude today's event, the new institute would like to provide would take a moment to present a gift for Thunderbird School of Global Management. And so, if someone would please take the gift, and Mr. Lawrence and as well as Dr. Zulfikar would stand up to provide the gift for Professor Lawrence as the representative of Thunderbird School of Global Management. Oh yeah. Big applause. Careful.
This is Sadewa. He's one of the prominent international figures. You can get Pak Yuli to translate and help you understand. Oh, yes, thank you, Pak. You always need wisdom, ya?
I just hope it brings me good luck.
It will.
It will.
Yes, yes. Not good luck, better luck. Thank you again, Mr.
Big round of applause. Thank you, Dr. Zulfikar and Mr. Lawrence. And so, that concludes for today's Leaders Legacy and Global Leadership event for the day. Ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed invited guests, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence today. Sekarang, untuk menutup acara secara official, Bapak Ibu kami undang untuk ke depan untuk melakukan sesi dokumentasi, untuk foto sebentar ya. Yeah, foto bareng. So we're going to take a picture for the documentation session today. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh iya.
Mungkin karena tempatnya sempit, sebagian duduk ya.
Oh iya, pakai kursi. Satu, dua, tiga, empat, lima, enam.
Dimatiin. Iya, iya. Kok naik.
Ini geser dikit nggak sih?
Misalnya
Oh iya, salah. Dah.
Thunderbird sekarang ya. Transformation. Saya mau ke Pak Yuli, Pak.
Dipersilakan untuk networking, free time.
Mas aja Mas aja
Biasa aja. Saya menutup. Ya udah nggak?
Nggak apa udah langsung mereka natural. Udah biasa.
Di hold.